Today, I want to talk to you about the best possible practice you could do on your bass. Now, I'm not talking about if you're a beginner and never played the bass. Obviously, there's some real fundamental stuff you need to work on. But I'm talking about if you're a decent player, you can play the bass, you know what's going on a little bit, and you say, man, what should I practice just to become a better player? To, raise my level of just performance, my technique, my cleanliness, my solidness, my creativity. Well, that would be studying Motown bass. Jamerson's bass lines were so powerful and intricate, and they stood the test of time. They stand the test of time. He influenced all the bass players that came after him. Now, I know there's every once in a while guys go, yeah, Jim, but I don't like Motown. Well, I find those people suspect myself. Who doesn't? But I'm not talking about you have to learn the Motown, you have to practice Motown to play Motown bass lines. No, I'm talking about enhancing your technique, your physical control on the instrument. I'm talking about developing a solidness of where's that one, both in the beat and in the tonality. I'm talking about learning the chord tones in each chord so you can move fluently between them. I'm talking about learning syncopation. Oh my goodness, syncopation. I'm talking about learning simply an accuracy and a control of execution. I tell my students all the time, man, if you get really good enough to where you can play the downbeats of every measure just perfectly, you'll be an excellent bass player and you'll be in demand. If you get to where you can play the downbeats and the upbeats perfectly all the time, oh my goodness, you're going to be better than the majority of the bass players on the planet. And you get to where you can play those downbeats, upbeats, and all that syncopation perfectly in time, well, you're Nathan East. Well, you're James Jamerson, except James invented all that stuff. And I'm dead serious, quite frankly, really. We can all play the things that we work on a million times. We can play them solidly. Well, guess what? If we work on some Jamerson, we'll be able to play subdivisions and all the different note choices and all different combinations of rhythms and pitches that are used in good bass lines well also. So it's just a matter of repetition is what it is. I think a mistake some people make when they start working on Jamerson is they work on material that's too difficult. They say, man, I'm going to learn how to play, so I'm going to start that, that Stevie Wonder song called, I just can't remember the name of it, but there's a bunch of them. And that's the one I'm going to learn. Well, some of those Jamerson lines are just too difficult if you've never worked on Motown, particularly if you don't have a good grasp of your instrument. So again, I'm not talking about beginner stuff here. There's some simple Jamerson we can work on, of course, but there's a lot of simple music and other styles and other plays we can work on too. What I'm talking about is when you get into those bass lines that are on all those Supreme songs, and of course the Stevie Wonder tunes, and there's a whole bunch of others. Marvin Gaye, there's a whole bunch. But the point is all of that classic, really moving Jamerson stuff, if you will practice it, and again, not to play the song, simply break it down into one measure phrases, two measure phrases, practice it, it will enhance your playing. You need to be working with a metronome and or a drum machine because you've got to hear that. We want to hear it in our ears ultimately. But if we're hearing it on a little drum machine, sometimes that helps us get it going. Now, obviously, too, we want to get to where we can hear it with the metronome. So the metronome's going tick, tick, and we're still hearing how it fits in there. I told a little story in a book I just wrote about how when my first, when I first saw my first Carol Kay book, the Boogaloo lines, and man, I had heard one of the recordings and I absolutely loved that thing, but it took me forever to figure out how to look at it and count it. Well, don't let that slow you down. There's nothing wrong with reading it and learning all that, but man, listen to the stuff and work for accuracy. Sometimes when we look at it, and I'm just simply looking at my book here, what's this one called? Reading Motown Bass. I just did a video with one of these examples here. Sometimes when we're looking at it, it really does help us a little bit figure it out. Now, our ears are always better in music. That's paramount. But we play it and we go, I can kind of get it, but I can't really see it. You get to where you can look at those subdivisions and see those 16ths, see those eighth notes, see those combinations. Here's this first measure. Bump, bap, ba-dee-da-da-da-da. Sure. You get that as a part of your default language. Start with rhythm. Beep, bop, ba-dee da 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 da. And it takes more repetition than you think. Some people practice this stuff for 10 or 15 minutes, go, I can do that. Well, the truth is, the more you'll repeat fundamental phrases of this Motown language, Jamerson's bass lines, the more you repeat them, the more they will start to reveal themselves to you. You'll start to hear things that need to be better. You'll start to hear it in other people's playing. And over time, not immediately, over time, you'll start to hear the own inadequacies or, the accuracies in your own playing. I call that, when I said earlier, it's the best practice you could ever do. That's simply because most of us don't have that facility that Jamerson had until we work on it a whole bunch. That's a funny thing. I mention this so often, and that is you'll never play beyond your technical ability. And I know there's always guys who go, well, I don't want to. I just want to play good, solid roots. Well, that's fine, man. But everybody wants to play cool stuff. And the point is you'll never even get creative and play other stuff until you physically can do it. So a lot of practice in Jamerson, in my opinion, for many of the students I make do it, it's really just to broaden their scope, their ability to hear rhythms. Now, the pitches aren't real hard in the Jamerson stuff. Well, sure, they're hard if you can't play the bass well, but he hardly ever plays beyond an octave. And vast majority of the time, he's playing octave, roots, and fifths. Then he'll get a little 6 and a flat 7 in there. Now, of course, there's some fills and some runs that he plays, but his bass lines are basically just all right underneath the hand. We just have to work that stuff out. Matter of fact, let me sing this third measure of this little example. Ba-dee, da-da, da-da, da-da-da. So we put those first 3 measures together. Listen to this. Boom, beep, ba-dee-da-da-da-da. Boom, ba-doo-dee. Boom, ba-dump, ba-dee-da-da-da. Boom, ba-doo-ba-dee. Sure. Now, you can learn a lot musically from Jamerson, too. He always plays phrases. He's got just tremendous, what I call question-answer phrases, or, call and response phrases. And that classic, what I just sang right there, that's a classic question, answer, question, ultimate answer. You betcha. I think that, not James, I started to say Jameson's underrated. No, everybody knows his playing and knows how great he plays. I think using Jameson's little isolated, what I call rhythmic cells and then pitch sets, I think that's totally an underrated practice procedure. I know because I've done it and I've had a lot of students do it. Every student I've ever had get into Jamerson, and I'm not talking about, I played 1 hour's worth or I learned one song. I'm talking about working on Jamerson for like 6 months nonstop. Every time I've had a student do that and focus on Jamerson, we finish that 6 months and they go, oh my God, everything about my playing has improved. Yeah, I know. And in every style of music that I play, the student says. Yes, agreed. There's just some fundamental stuff. Now, one can, sort of argue or say, hey, well, Jim, I play whoever. I play, Jean Mayung stuff, and that helps my chops and makes me play fast. Well, that's kind of on the edge. Most people can't play that stuff. Most people can't even hear it. So I'm not saying, Jamerson his music, Motown music is better than the rest of the world, but I'll tell you, I think it's the best teaching, the best exercise type practice to develop, shouldn't even call it exercise, the best developmental practice you can do to expand your knowledge, your capacity, your control on your instrument. And as always, man, if we can develop mastery on the fingerboard, all music, regardless of style, gets easier, a lot easier. I might as well mention, I have a number of books. You can go find them on my website, but one that I'm sort of most excited about, a lot of people are having fun with, is the newest one called Reading Motown Bass. And while it says reading, I just like that in the title. Truthfully, it's just Jamerson phrases. 1-bar licks, 2-bar licks, 4-bar licks, 8-bar licks, combinations of those. And there's audio that you can simply go online and download for free, and you can listen to it to see if that's one you want to work on. So just take one of the exercises and just start playing it. Get it perfect, man. Work out some fingerings. Again, if you're at a level where you just can't begin to do this, well, you need to back up. I wrote other books where I wrote one book that's just got like the first 50, I think it's 60 pages. It's just a study of rhythmic cells and pitch sets. It's like practicing the rhythms with no pitches. and then practicing the pitches, but in a simpler rhythm than Jamerson uses them. I assume you know Jamerson's lines are quite virtuosic. I've only heard, I mean, there's some great players who sound like it, but the player who I feel like, took it in and took it beyond was Jaco. There's a whole number of Jaco bass lines where it sounds like Jamerson on steroids. Most players sound like a tamed down Jamerson, which is good too. Of course, that's good. So again, I'm not worried about you sounding like Jamerson. I think what we can do, though, is we can practice these Motown elements. Again, these really short little phrases. Hey, there's nothing wrong with learning transcription. If you want to learn how to play whatever, that's great. Bernadette. Sure, there's nothing wrong with that. But what you really want to do is break it down to one measure phrases, learn those, and start working those around all the 12 keys on your bass. Because we want to develop a consistency, a solidness with your lick, and then we want to develop a control of it anywhere on the instrument, whether it's starting on the E string or starting on the A or playing higher or playing lower. Yeah, that would be that's a great exercise. Just take one lick, like that one I sang here. I'm sing it again. Bump, beep, ba-dee-da-da-da-da. Sure, it's classic Jamerson. And let's play that, 32 times in one key, and then move to another key 32 times, then move to another key. And what happens sometimes is you get, as you do it, your 32 measures in a row, well, you get more solid at it, of course. Then you do that in 2 or 3 keys and your mind starts to wander. Sometimes the most difficult part about a good practice like this is that we do get bored. We, grooving along, and it gets more and more solid. Then we sort of lose our concentration and we let things kind of fade. And that takes practice in itself. To be able to play for a long time, repeating good phrasing, not just jamming around, but repeating actual good stuff and maintain the focus. Folks, good music is not casual. Sometimes people just think, well, yeah, but I'm just going to sort of jam and do my own thing. Well, that's totally fine, but that's not what most great bassists are doing. Most of them are playing a real defined, solid line. I mean, all you got to do is listen and look at some of the notation of Jamerson, and you'll see he wasn't just jamming around. I can't recommend enough that you work on the Jamerson phrasing, the Jamerson, pitch sets and rhythmic cells enough. Turn them into little etudes, if you will. That's a good one right there. Make an exercise, make an etude out of a 1-bar or a 2-bar phrase and just repeat it over and over and over until it's just so rock solid. Then take another 2 bars in a classic song or out of a good book and turn that into a little etude in itself. Remember the definition of etude? Sure. Just do that a lot, and by goodness, your playing will just skyrocket in its consistency, in its execution, in your cleanliness, in your actual just chops, being able to do it. And of course, you learn the fingerboard, you learn the harmony. There's a lot of benefits, as I said. What's the best practicing you can do? It's working on Motown stuff. Fired up.